this episode of My Cat's Tale, let's meet Chloe.
I was just charmed straight away. I thought, this is going to be fun, this cat, because it's speaking it. She seems all right on the leash. Maybe I'll just take her on the bus on the leash. So that's what I did. This animal has changed my life. I'm a much happier person now, generally, because of Chloe.
Joining me now on My Cat's Tale, Ian, a long-time podcaster, and we think we met many decades ago.
Too long to remember, I think, really. I love it, Got a master's degree in radio. I was thinking about that the other day. In many ways, podcasting, I think, is the original radio.
We're not here, though, to talk about all of that fun and games. We're talking about our great feline friend, specifically, in your case, Chloe, although Toshi's going to figure into the picture there as well. Tell us about Chloe.
She was a rescue cat. I was engaged to be married, and my fiance and I decided that we'd have a cat, and we decided that it was going to be a black cat because, as you will be aware, people tend to shy away from black cats. We went along to the rescue centre, and there were a lot of cabins full of different cats, and there was a cat that we originally wanted to see, and I said hello to it, and it immediately scratched me. We said, "Have you got any other cats?" And they said, "Oh yeah, there's this one over here." And we walked over to the other side of the room, and the woman opened this cabin, and this black cat came bounding down the stairs inside the cabin, came out of it, then rolled along the floor and bared its stomach, and was really vocal as well. And I was just charmed. I have to be honest, straight away. I thought, this is going to be fun, this cat, because it's speaking at me. My soon-to-be wife said, do you have any other cats? And the woman said, well, we've got a couple at the back, a bit senior. And I turned to my wife and said, look, would you be happy taking this cat and having a simple decision, this cat or no cat? Or would you want to see the other two cats and then have to choose one of three? And she said, I'll be happy with this cat. And I said, okay, then we get this cat. And we duly got Chloe, she was put in a carrier, and she was really vocal all the way home. We got home, she dived under the nearest chair and sat there for a few hours. And gradually she came out of her shell, and we started to feed her. Now, being one of the things I've wanted to do was to take her to the vet and have her checked over. So I did that, and the vet said, this cat's very overweight. It's 6.7 kilograms, and it's probably should be around 4.5. So, and that's a horrifying, weight, really. I realized that she wasn't going to lose that weight based on food alone, because she just wasn't that active in the house. She would basically spend most of the days looking out the window and going to sleep, which isn't uncommon for cats, as you know. And so I thought, well, maybe I could leash train her and take her out in the back garden. So I bought a figure of 8 harness. That's the one with the 2 loops. It's a good one to start harness training a cat with, because it's, not as constraining as, say, a cat jacket. And I put that on her, and I took it step by step. I put it on her first, just the harness, and watched her walk around the flat with it, and she was fine. Then I attached the leash and watched her drag that around the flat, and that was fine. And then I picked up the leash and allowed her to walk me around the flat, and that was fine. Then finally I took her out in the back garden, and she, had a little explore around the back garden, and we kept doing that at least once a day. And there came a point when I actually kept the harness on, because it's helpful to, if they dive under a bush or something, it's quite handy to have something to grab hold of. But in the end, I sort of did away with the leash, and we would just go out in the back. She would wander around the garden. She might do her business. and that was that. And she eventually got down to the 4.5 kilograms due to this combination of exercise and leash training. And it became obvious that there are a couple of things about Chloe. The one thing was she really didn't like being enclosed. To this day I've never seen her in a cardboard box. I've seen her in a really shallow wooden box once, and that's in 4 or 5 years. The other thing is that she's actually okay in different environments, and that's key. So when one of the things we had to do during the weight loss journey was I used to have to take her for weight checkups at the vet every month. And that's how we tracked her weight and how much to feed and that kind of thing. And it became quickly apparent that attempting to take her there in a carrier was not the best idea. I've had cats before that haven't enjoyed their carriers. Chloe's on another level. If she walks into a room and sees a carrier, she's immediately, she's immediately fixed in terms of her arms and legs positions sticking out, so she can't be put in a carrier. So, and I thought, well, she seems all right on the leash. Maybe I just take her on the bus on a leash. So that's what I did. And she was absolutely fine with it. She just sat on my lap all the way to the vet. And the vet was quite surprised when I turned up with this cat on a leash. We used to sit on the bench in the cat end of the reception area with all these other owners that had cats in carriers. So we made quite the sight, but she was really comfortable, and that was that was the start of her accompanying me to places, I guess. The next step was that the next major step, I guess, was I got some work in Newcastle. My mum lives up there, and I would basically stay in Newcastle for 4 days a week and come back down to London for the weekend, for the Friday and the weekend, and taking the good old LNER train. And it was a stressful journey. I found it stressful being autistic. Travel is one of the things that can produce a lot of anxiety, and it certainly does for me. But, I needed to earn a living, so that's what I did. And there came a point where my Chloe used to stay in London with my fiance, and Chloe, my wife to be, my fiance, she got some work abroad and couldn't look after Chloe for 3 weeks. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll take Chloe up to Newcastle.
That's quite a big jump. Just like, I'll bring the cat with me.
Yeah.
Knowing that Chloe can't go in a cat box.
Yeah, absolutely. So on this occasion, I did put her in the cat box. And this is the thing. So I put her in the cat box and somehow, and needless to say, she meowed. And I got into the train carriage and she just carried on meowing. And I thought, oh my God, people are going to complain. We got 3.5 hour journey it was about 3.5 hours at that point, to Newcastle. People are going to complain. So I took her out the carrier, not realizing I was breaking a railway bylaw.
Really?
The National Rail Conditions of Travel say that a cat must be in a box or a carrier. The only animal that is allowed to be on a leash is a dog. And dogs of certain sizes, I think, as well. But I took Chloe out of the box and she immediately calmed down. And she just sat on my lap all the way to Newcastle, 3.5 hours. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Of course, I got to Newcastle and I couldn't get her back in the carrier. Luckily, I was being picked up. So I ended up walking through Newcastle station with this cat on my shoulder, supported by my hand, and this carrier in the other hand. And we got to my mum's house. My mum at that point was still working, and she was working away from Newcastle. So the place was empty. We walked in the door, and Chloe methodically, and I don't lie, methodically explored the house, one room after the other, And it was literally the case that she went up the stairs, she took the first room on the left, came out of that, did the next one in sequence, did the next one in sequence, came back down the stairs, did the same on the ground floor. And then she just sat in the living room and lay down as if she'd been there for years. It was like, okay, this is an unusual cat. And the thing was that so the 3 weeks took place, and I took Chloe in the back garden there. And again, same thing. She'd sort of sniff around, look around the garden. She might do her business, although she had a cat that had tray indoors. And the journey home took place, and the same thing happened. Basically, I got her into the carrier. We got to Newcastle Central Station, got on the train, meow, meow, meow. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have to get her out again. So I got her out, and she sat on my lap for 3.5 hours, no problem at all. And of course, I got to Euston and couldn't put her in the carrier again. I didn't have a lift on that occasion, so we ended up taking the Victoria line in the overground, with me carrying this cat and holding an empty cat carrier in my right hand. But she was absolutely fine, and she was no trouble at all.
Hey, how are you feeling during all this?
I guess a little bit concerned, because of course the wisdom is you don't do that with a cat. The cats have a reputation, I guess, for being skittish, and difficult in that respect. But Chloe was absolutely fine. On the train on the overground, again, she just sat on my lap and watched everybody. When we were walking and she was on my shoulder, so she had her two paws on my shoulder, and then I was supporting her bottom, and she was looking over my shoulder. That was the thing. And she was comfortable that way too. And I got her home, and we had a weight check at the vets that weekend. And it became apparent that Chloe had lost a lot more weight with me in Newcastle than she had with my wife in London previously. So I negotiated with my soon-to-be wife that we would allow me to take Chloe to Newcastle every other week. So that's what I started doing, and we became a bit of a familiar face on the LNER trains, which might have been Virgin at that point. And then I realized I was breaking the conditions of carriage, the bylaws and what have you. So I actually contacted the train company, and I said, look, is this okay? And I met the head of customer services, Mike Ross, who's still there today. And Chloe and I met him in Euston Station. We had a meeting with him where she sat on my lap throughout and didn't do anything, just sat on my lap. And he said, I got no concerns with you and Chloe. That's fine. If you ever get into any trouble, just tell them to speak to me. And that was the start of our trips to Newcastle every other week. And that contributed to Chloe losing the weight, and her better health. But then something else happened. I suddenly realized that the travel was much easier for me. I wasn't as anxious. I also, some parts of a train journey can be very noisy. Some travelers on trains can be very noisy. And I used to find this quite overwhelming. But suddenly with Chloe there to distract me, I guess, who knows how it works. Basically having her there just made the journey a lot easier. And I would arrive home a lot less spent. I would be a lot less exhausted because she'd been with me.
And for people who aren't aware, that overwhelming sensation for people who are on the spectrum can be not just overpowering, but almost suffocating.
Yeah, it's if you were to believe everything you'd read, autism finishes when you're a child, but it doesn't. You could, as an adult, you continue to be overwhelmed by and have sensory overload. Of course, it's a spectrum, so how people are affected differs from person to person. But with me, sound and noise and bright lights and things are difficult. And of course, you get a lot of that on trains and travel. And yeah, Chloe, the presence of Chloe just meant I think that I could focus on her, which meant my brain wasn't being overpowered by everything else. It's difficult to say why, because there isn't a huge amount of research on it. There just seems to be an acknowledgement that cats in particular are very good for autistic people. Of course, most autistic people have their cat at home and it stays at home.
Because we now have quite an unusual situation. You already briefly mentioned it there. The conditions of carriage, dogs, no problem. Cats, no.
I kind of realized that the function that Chloe provides to me is along those lines, along the lines of a service cat. Some people say, "Oh, she's an emotional support animal." Well, there's two things on that. One is that emotional support animals generally aren't trained, and Chloe is trained. I since those early days, I have deliberately taken her into different environments for her to get used to them. Ensuring that when I do so, that I'm always treating her, because she's very food motivated. So ensuring that I treat her, because the thing is, if you just take a cat to a strange environment, you can flood them, you can overwhelm them. That's not what you want. What you want is to be able to take cat into an environment in a controlled manner, and continue to give them treats or rubs on the top of the head or whatever it is that they like, so that basically is a counterpoint, a counter condition to the environment. So I've done that for a long time with Chloe, and to the extent where I I trust her completely now. I can go pretty much anywhere with Chloe, and I know that she will stay on my shoulder, or on my lap or wherever she needs to be. And realizing that she so that's one distinction why I don't believe she's an emotional support animal. I think she offers me more than a support animal as well. The second thing is that in the UK, the law is that it doesn't actually define animals in any way as support. So not even with guide dogs, really. If you look at the Equality Act 2010, which is the law that accommodates guide dogs and assistance animals, that defines an assistance dog in a later section of that is specifically for in relation to taxis. And that was because there historically have been a lot of taxi drivers that have refused assistance dogs. Elsewhere in the Act, you'll find no definition of an assistance animal, and because they're essentially considered an auxiliary aid. So as long as the person is disabled under the definition of the Equality Act 2010, as long as the animal addresses and mitigates their disability, then that handler is entitled to reasonable adjustments from a service provider. That's basically the law. So that's what accommodates assistance animals potentially of all kinds. Now, with guide dogs and other assistance dogs, there are they've existed for a long time, and I think the AD UK, Assistance Dogs UK, which represents a lot of assistance dogs charities. I think they say that they have 7,000 handlers of assistance dogs in the UK. So we're kind of used to seeing assistance dogs and their handlers, and people. And there's also, I guess, a little bit of case law around them, in the sense that some assistance dog owners in the past have experienced discrimination. Sadly, there's a lot of it that still goes on today. But then in those older cases, they took the person to court, and so there's some case law that exists in relation to dogs. We're used to seeing dogs supporting people, but not cats. And things like at home, she kind of wakes me up in the morning. She tells me when I need to stop arguing with people on the internet and should go to bed. She tells me when I should take my many pills now. And she's the structure at home, but then when we go out, it's kind of like she prevents the sensory overload by, I think, being that focus. And but also the fact that if I do get some situations it's impossible. So Euston Station would be a good example. There's just so much noise when you walk into it, it's hard. And but if I have any concerns, then I will look at Chloe, and invariably where she's looking is where my attention should be. And it's just for this animal has changed my life. I'm a much happier person now generally, because of Chloe. It's we've been to, I think Chloe and I have been to 200 different venues, over 240, because one of the things I realized that if you're going to have conversations about taking your cat somewhere, because I do arrange everything in advance. I generally don't turn up at a place unannounced, because cats as support animals are so uncommon. So I will contact a venue in advance, whether that be a hotel, a restaurant, a museum, cinema, or anything else. And as part of that conversation, I try to explain the experience that Chloe has and the fact that she'll be no bother, etc. And so for those reasons, I keep a record of where we've been and the training, I guess, that she's had. And she's been to over 240 venues now. A lot of them museums, but because I decided that I needed to combat staying at home all the time, and that was the best way. It has been overwhelmingly positive. The reaction of people generally when I take Chloe or Toshi out, for that matter, is, wow, what well-behaved cats. I've never seen a cat out like this. Doesn't that cat try to go or leave, or doesn't that cat try to leave? No, it doesn't. It just stays with me. The biggest problem I've faced, unfortunately, is from certain organizations, companies that have outdated policies that reflect an interpretation of the law rather than the law itself. And that generally, because the law fundamentally is that disabled people are given reasonable adjustments. So that requires that if a disabled person come to a business and say, I would like this adjustment, the business has to consider it properly. They have to consider granting that adjustment. And of course, when I contact most companies, that's what they do. And they read about the extent to which I've trained both cats. They learn about how they've been outside and everything in different environments and been no trouble at all. And of course, they grant me that permission in the majority of cases. They grant me that reasonable adjustment. Now, last May, there was a lot of publicity about me and Chloe because it became known that I was taking and am taking Sainsbury's to court after being asked to leave one of their stores. I contacted them in advance, as I contact many businesses. They said I shouldn't have a problem going into a store with Chloe. I went into a total of 2 of their stores 5 times without any issue at all. Chloe traveling on my shoulder, did my shopping, left, no remarks from anyone. And then one fateful day in March, I went into a different store, Clapham Common, and was chased around the store by a security guard who told me to leave. And I told him that it was a reasonable adjustment under the Equality Act. He couldn't care less. He just ignored what I was saying and just told me to leave repeatedly. That was in March, and I spoke to Sainsbury's afterwards and said, "Look, you told me it was okay, and it wasn't." And they just kept saying, "We're sorry, we'll pass the feedback on." And I said, "Well, am I okay to visit the store again?" And they wouldn't tell me. They wouldn't say yes. They wouldn't say no. So I ended up in a situation where I thought, well, what can I do? So I sent them what's known as a letter before action, which is basically a letter says, look, I've been discriminated against. If you don't remedy this, then I'll take you to court. Sainsbury's then responded basically saying, we have this policy. It's no pets apart from assistance dogs. Um, so that left me no choice really but to take them to court. The situation is that after a long court delay, we've received their defence, which doesn't say much more than what their original communication said with me. The case continues to move on.
And I should also point out here that Sainsbury's reply to you is posted up in full on your website.
Yeah, that's right. So I posted everything up until the point where I took them to court is up on a website called catfriendly.org. My hope is that they will come to the table at some point, that it won't get to court, and that they will allow me to shop with Chloe or Toshi under control. I'm quite happy to do a trip to a store while they watch me and check that they're comfortable with how it all goes. And hopefully that will happen. We'll see. One of the reasons why people are excited about the court case is because if it went to court, there is the potential that the judge could specifically say cats are fine as an assistance animal. So it would bring a level of certainty, clarity, where there isn't any today. So that would be a massive positive for disabled people potentially. Personally, I would prefer Sainsbury's to settle before then and allow me to go shopping. I never wanted the fact that I'm autistic to be known worldwide. I don't want all that. I just want to shop with my cat. She's just an amazing cat. The sad thing is that she started to show some signs of arthritis. And when I adopted Chloe, we were told that she was 4 years old. It later transpired that she was 9. So all of a sudden I got, I've lost 5 years of my cat. And that's still difficult to deal with. But I mean, it wouldn't have changed. We would still have adopted her and everything because I was just blown away by her personality. And God, what a lucky thing that was. And but it meant that last year she started to show signs of arthritis, and so I've started to significantly reduce going out with her. And I'm training another cat that you mentioned in the beginning, Toshi, who I got. My mum bought me. Mums are awesome. In September. And for my birthday, and Toshi is very unlike Chloe. Chloe is a black moggy. She looks like other moggies. Toshi, on the other hand, is an outcross of a Abyssinian and a Singapore cat. Now that combination of cats means that you have a cat that is very handler focused, shall we say, or owner focused. It's not uncommon for Singaporeans and Abyssinians to spend, 6 hours of every day lying on their owner. I'm moving forward with Toshi starting to fulfill the role that Chloe used to when we're out and about. It's an interesting challenge because, Chloe just kind of happened. I saw something and I thought, okay, I can develop this. Whereas Toshi, I'm deliberately trying to train in a methodical way. And but she amazes me. And Chloe and Toshi are very different. And I think the best thing about what I'm trying to do with the training is take advantage of how they are naturally. So an example is that, Chloe, as I say, she'll only walk when we're near home. All other times she likes to be on my shoulder, and we walk everywhere like that. I now have a toddler hip seat that I strap to my chest, and Chloe's bottom sits on that and her two paws are on my shoulder. It's quite a secure way for her to travel, because normally my hand would be on top of her as well. So it's impossible really for her to move from there, because my hand is there. She's on a leash, so she wouldn't get very far anyway. But in 4 or 5 years, she's never moved off from that position. Toshi, on the other hand, likes walking. So the challenge I have with Toshi at the moment is that she makes a lot of noise, meows at me a lot when I carry her, because she wants to be on the ground. So it's unfortunate, because sometimes I'm carrying her to keep her safe. It's just not the right environment for a cat to walk. But my hope is that in time she'll realize that I'm doing it for her, and that she'll get used to it, and she'll enjoy the times that she does walk. Yesterday we went to the cinema, me and Toshi. Toshi sits on my chest and goes to sleep when we watch a film, or I watch a film. And she walked most of the way from the train station to home. And she, much like a, junior puppy. Well, that's something that I'll build upon, because that's what she wants to do. My general rule with both cats is that I'll allow them to do what they want, providing it's safe. And I'll work with that as well, in terms of spending time with them every day. But it's funny. I work from home. I do a lot of video calls, and 9 times out of 10 today, Chloe will be in a corner sleeping, enjoying her retirement. Toshi will be in my arms sleeping, and that's how I have to work now. It's luckily I work for a pet food manufacturer, so we are used to seeing our pets on screen. And Toshi, everybody's charmed by her, as they were by Chloe. But yeah, it's we'll see how the journey. Toshi is 9 months now, so still a kitten, still very enthusiastic. Loves playing fetch with a pipe cleaner. I'll sort of throw it in one direction, she'll go and collect it and bring it back. And like I said, very different cat, but we'll see how that journey continues.
It does sound like the three of you, Toshi and Chloe and yourself, have found a wonderful, I was going to say working partnership, but it's a life partnership, just this sort of generational support in all directions.
I find it amazing that the cats have had this impact on me in many ways. But I can honestly say, I've fought depression all my life. And like I say, I'm happier now than I've ever been. And it's entirely due to these 2 cats of mine.
Ian, you all have a wonderful feline life down there. And thank you for telling us such an uplifting story.
You're most welcome. Thank you for asking me. Thank you.
You've been listening to My Cat's Tale, a Spence Media production. Listen to more tales of our perfect pets at mycatstalepod.com and support us on Patreon. The tale of Chloe there, and also the tale of Toshi and the tale of Ian as well. He's put together all of those details on service cats at the website catfriendly.org. We'll have a link back to that at our website, as always, mycatstailpod.com. Once more, thank you all out there for listening. Every cat has a tail and every cat has a tail. Can't get the spelling clear on the podcast. But what we do here every week is to tell those tales of our tailed feline friends. Thanks for listening, and as always, I'll catch you again next week.